Point out one thing to you. Well, two things. Number one, we have refreshments for you, so please make sure to go over there and get something to eat and drink. But second of all, I want to show you the flags that are around this commons. The flags around the commons represent the nationalities of the students that attend this high school. And so every time we get a new nationality, we add a flag. This is a very diverse school district, and we are very proud of our academic and athletic achievements here. We're an AVID high school that stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And we also have opened a brand new $40 million middle school across the street. And that was through the work of the wonderful, supportive taxpayers of the Park Rose School District. And we invite you to take a tour of that LEED Gold building at any time. You're welcome to call my office, and I will personally take you on a tour. So, welcome tonight.
Thank you, Karen. Tonight, I'd like to welcome Representative Jeff Reardon in the audience tonight. Jeff?
Could you turn the sound up so we can, I'm not here.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, okay. Great. Jeff, we're not going to testify just yet. If you can hold on just a second. We've got a couple more things, and then we'll get to the testimony. In terms of agenda, we'll have meeting minutes from September 23rd PSC meeting. I've got some business to discuss, and then Eric will provide a quick overview of the comp plan process, where we are, what we're doing, and going forward. And then we will have testimony. I will call up 3 testifiers at a time by name. If you wish to testify, please fill out a card and provide it to Julie. You will have 3 minutes to testify and provide information. If you have written information, please provide it to Julie, and she makes sure that that information gets to us. So with that, let's start with the consent agenda.
I move approval. Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Any items from the director?
Just real quickly, I wanted to.
Hit your mic.
Is it on? It should be on.
Nope.
Well,
How about the one next to
I was
you?
just going to thank Mike Challenge. I am. Here it is. No? Yeah? Better? All right. I just wanted to thank Mike Hauk. Last week we had at City Council the climate preparation strategy, and it also went to Multnomah County for approval. It came through here. We appreciate the work you all did on it, and especially I appreciate Mike's work on it and others of the commission. And Mike also represented the Planning and Sustainability Commission at City Council, and maybe he has something else to add.
Not other than the fact that Pentagon seems to be ahead of some government agencies, not the city of Portland. The one thing we did discuss that I'm really pleased the PSC put in our letter of conveyance was that we really do need to get on the ball and working with Metro to try to expand, especially both the adaptation plan and the preparation strategy to the regional level. So we're looking forward to how we achieve that. I did talk to Metro Councilor Bob Stacy just the day before the City Council hearing, and he took a lot of notes, and I'm sure we'll be following up to talk about how we can move forward at Metro at the regional level. And staff, as always, did a great job at the presentation and with the documents.
Thank you, Mike, for filling in for me. I really appreciate it. A little bit about the meeting tonight. This is our second hearing on the comp plan. We have 2 more hearings scheduled this fall, plus we have a hearing on the TSP, the Transportation Systems Plan, and the Economic Opportunities Analysis. Both of those will occur early in 2015. We will start as a commission on November 18th work sessions and continue our work sessions throughout the spring of 2015. During the work sessions, there will be issues that will be clarified, and maybe new information that's being introduced. And because of that, we anticipate keeping the written record open for the comp plan open until March 13th, 2015. So as we go through the work plan, you'll be able to make comments on our comments, I guess, from a written standpoint. We also suggest that as you look at the draft, if you have not commented and wish to comment, that you get your comments in, because those comments are going to be accumulated by the staff and presented to us in our work session and around topics. As I said, tonight is the second of 4 planned hearings about the comp plan. As a reminder, this is really about you, the public, testifying to us about what you like, don't like, what you'd like to see changed, improved. So we're really here to listen. If commissioners have a burning question, they'll ask you, but most likely we'll just thank you for your testimony and move to the next person. Again, if you wish to testify, please put your name on one of the cards and provide it to Julie, and you'll be called up by name. After Eric's testimony, when you come up, please provide your name. That's really what we need before you start your testimony. The testimony cards we received for tonight are only for tonight's hearing, and for the next 2, we'll only use the cards we received during those hearings for that night. Tonight you will have 3 minutes. The little light over there is green. It goes yellow with 30 seconds left, and it goes red when you're finished. One of the things, if someone's already covered your topic, if you have new information, that's helpful. For us, if you have specific information relative to the comp plan in terms of policy pages, that's very helpful for us, because we'll look it up and we can reference it. We won't be taking a break, so we're going to go through. I think we're into the, we're well into the 20s in terms of testimony, so we will just continue to take testimony, and so commissioners, feel free to get up and stretch your legs and get more coffee. And again, as always, Channel 30 records these, and they're on Channel 30 and also on the Planning Sustainability website, YouTube channel by the end of the week. Any questions, comments? At this point, we'll have Eric's presentation, and then we'll have Representative Ridden provide his testimony.
Thank you. Is this on? Is this on? Okay, great. I'm going to keep my remarks brief tonight because the main point of this evening's meeting is to hear testimony from the public. Just a few quick reminders about the overall process and what we're here to talk about. The proposal before you includes a number of different elements, including a map, land use map, and policy document, and citywide system plan, as well as a list of infrastructure projects. So all those things are on the table for the discussion. This is a quick slide, and I apologize from the audience that's kind of washed out, but that's a map of the land use changes that are proposed, and one of the things you could see on that map is that a lot of the city isn't changing, but we're here to take testimony on what is. Andre mentioned this is the second of 4 hearings. The next hearing is at PCC on 82nd Avenue on October 28th. The hearings won't be the end of the discussion. As the chair mentioned, there'll be some work sessions coming starting in November. The first work session is on November 18th, where the commission will set an agenda for the subsequent work sessions and identify what the major topics are they want to dig into a little bit deeper. We'll also hear a report from our Community Involvement Committee on that evening, and observations from city agency staff. more work sessions coming in January. There is a transportation system plan hearing scheduled in late February on the 24th, we'll be taking, we are taking testimony on the preliminary transportation system plan list now. That list will be updated before the November 4th hearing, and then it'll be further narrowed by the February 24th meeting. So there's a number of different meetings related to transportation plans still coming ahead. And then in the later stages of your decision making, you'll go into an evaluation of does the plan meet some of the goals that you set in adopting the Portland plan in 2012. And this diagram just gives a rough calendar of that sequence, and we're kind of at the beginning third of that sequence still, where you're holding public hearings. We haven't yet moved into the work sessions phase. And then, as the chair mentioned, you intend to continue taking public testimony through that work session phase. And then finally, in the spring, we'll enter more of the decision-making phase, but also during that time, review how we're doing in terms of performance. We'll revisit the economic opportunities analysis, which is the employment land issue, and we'll revisit the growth scenarios report with some of the metrics on how we're doing with this plan. Just a brief update, and this is in some of the material provided to you for tonight, but this is a map of, a heat map, if you will, of the locations where we're receiving public testimony, online testimony through the MAP app, and as you can see, a lot of that is concentrated in inner southeast Portland. In terms of geography, Commissioner Gray might be interested to know that the number of East Portland comments has increased substantially since the last hearing. It's still not to the level of inner southeast Portland, but we're getting there. In terms of topics, the mixed use areas and the residential designations are still the most popular topics in terms of policy and map-related policy. In terms of the policy chapters, the economic and environmental chapters are leading in terms of public comments received to date. A reminder for the public that we are still taking comments via our MAP app online, and that's an easy way for you to select a property or a land use proposal and actually make your comment and view other people's comments, and all of those comments are being delivered to the Planning Commission before each hearing. And you can also send comments into the Planning Commission email or send an old-fashioned letter to them at the address there. We also have more information on our website, and we still have a helpline. If you have questions about the proposal that you need to ask before testifying, some of our help staff are actually here tonight, but then you can also call the number on the screen there, which is 503-823-0195. And that concludes my presentation tonight, and I'll get out of your way.
Great. Thank you. Representative Jeff Reardon.
I guess I was excited about presenting. I dashed up here so quickly, but I thought you had called me up. So I am State Representative Jeff Reardon, District 48, which is a bit south of here, more into the Lentz area and down into Happy Valley. But I have a long time history with East Portland, beginning with my first teaching job, which was at Park Rose High School. So I feel like I'm one of the Broncos who has returned and continue to love this area. Before I go any further, though, I would be amiss if I didn't recognize Representative Barbara Smith Warner, one of my most excellent colleagues, is also in the audience. Somewhere. There she is. Oh, hey. Anyway, so onward. I have been reaching out to my community, which I continue to go to neighborhood association, business association meetings. Last night I was at the Palhurst-Gilbert Neighborhood Association meeting. They actually had a training on the comp plan and how to use a map app. So it was great. Chris Garcella was out and did a wonderful job as always. I think what the message I'd want to take from the conversations I've had with our community are three. Basically, talk a little bit about downzoning, transportation, and equity. And our schools are full. And particularly if you talk about David Douglas, I'm sure Karen would tell you the situation in Park Rose. But David Douglas for sure, the schools are full. I was teaching there up until 2 years ago. And we're just totally overcrowded and no place to build, or we don't have the budget to build. They tried to build an elementary school and could not provide the funding for that. And yet we still have an influx of new citizens every day. So it's a real challenge. I would ask you, I know that you've made some moves to down zone, and I would ask you to be a bit more aggressive in that. Perhaps not back to the stages when the city annexed this area, but certainly get a little bit closer to that. Transportation planning must be a part of the comp plan, and to my understanding, the TSP, the Transportation System Plan, has not been completely upgraded, has not included some of the comments and the input that's been made over the last 3 or 4 years that really needs to consider the work of the East Portland Action Plan, the East Portland in Motion, Pedestrian Master Plan, the Bike Master Plan, all those plans, they have to be part of that. That is so fundamental to everything else that we're doing. And so please figure out a way to allow time to integrate that planning work into the comprehensive plan. It's been widely reported, and probably anybody that you would talk to out here would state that East Portland has been somewhat neglected over the years in terms of funding. And some of us might be so bold to consider that any funding going forth should be actually a little bit higher percentage than other parts of this city. If we can't do that, at least please strive for parity on any funding decisions that are made. We have about 28% of this city's population east of 82nd, and it's time that we get our share. With that, I think just a little more aggressive on downsizing, transportation, and funding parity would be the three messages I would ask you to take home. Thank you very much for joining us out here in East Portland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you for everything.
It's been awesome.
So the first three, Mo Farhand, Terry Parker, Bob Salinger. Again, please state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Mo, you want to get started?
Good evening. My name is Mo Farhood, and I respectfully request that this property be designed multifamily. I am a refugee from Lebanon who escaped from the Lebanon Civil War due to the passing of my parents and sibling. To my extended family that have been live in Portland since 50s. I have worked at Saturday Market vendor, architecture engineer, and renovated Skidmore building. I have acquired apartment building under Stark First Management in the Gateway Rockwood area, and I provided affordable and quality housing to this franchise since 1988. My mission is second chance landlord. I provide housing to those who have eviction, conviction, and a credit issue. I work closely with the state, Portland Police, and my neighborhood's church and agency. I buy apartment building and reuse and renovate them. I increase the number of the unit in the market demand and affordability by the market, 2 and 1 bedroom unit to studio and 1 bedroom unit. I need the multifamily dwelling, 1,000 unit, allow this to happen. My project does not create an increased intensity. They provide affordable unit for people to stabilize in the supportive and comprehensive environmental. my inspiration and consistent with all proposed comprehensive plan goal and many of policy. It's good?
You're good?
Thank you.
Thank you. What is the property address you're talking about?
In the proposal, I have 4 different property.
Okay, and you've provided that to staff?
Yes, and I have 4 extra package if anybody need a package.
Yep, you've got them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Terry?
My name's Terry Parker. My name's Terry Parker, Northeast Portland. The anti-car mindset in the comp plan victimizes Portlanders. The driving community is victimized by siphoning off and poaching motorist paid gas taxes to fund specialized infrastructure for freeloading bicyclists that arrogantly refuse to follow even the simplest of traffic control devices. When receiving citations for blowing through controlled intersections outside the metro area, their self-righteous excuse is they don't have to stop in Portland. Sharing the road must require sharing the financial responsibility. The comp plan needs to specify bicyclists pay for bicycle infrastructure. Family time and the environment are victimized with projects like curb extensions and the road diet on Foster. A combined 1,280 daily hours will be added to travel times on Foster alone, with engines running longer and more fuel being consumed. Motor vehicle capacity needs to be expanded to keep traffic flowing, not reduced. Neighborhood livability and the quality of life are being victimized by not requiring adequate parking commensurate with new multifamily residential development. Neighborhood streets fill up with cars, some occupying the same place for days on end. This victimization is already taking place on Lower Division. PBOT now wants to manage on-street parking, likely with new fees, thereby victimizing underrepresented daily drivers and automobile owners, and further victimizing longtime residents for a problem that city policy has created. A 2013 study identified that 72% of the occupied units in apartment buildings without parking have 1 or more cars. The comp plan needs a reality check by requiring a minimum of 0.75 parking places per unit for new residential development, including on civic corridors like Sandy Boulevard, in town centers like Hollywood, and around transit stations. Job seekers are victimized in that 8 to 10% of the jobs in the U.S. are tied to the automobile industry, most of them family wage jobs. An average new car dealership in Oregon employs about 60 people. The income earned is also victimized. A bicycle mechanic earns about $27,000 to $28,000 per year, while an auto mechanic earns about $40,000 to $50,000 a year. With a higher percentage of low-wage jobs due to the anti-car mindset, the city receives less tax revenue to provide services to the people, and that spends a greater share of those tax dollars to subsidize low-income households. Finally, taxpayers are victimized. Whereas driving is subsidized at less than a dime per passenger mile, transit is subsidized at over 60 cents per passenger mile. Enlarging the footprint of transit and adding streetcar lines increases the cost, in effect broadening the non-existence of financial self-sustainability. While a financial self-sustainable goal for transit must be inserted in the comp plan, it is economically unfeasible to expect any form or magnitude of transit will take everybody where they want to go. You don't see the city of Portland rushing to eliminate the fleet of city-owned cars. In closing, for the economic vitality of Portland, transportation hierarchies, language, incentives that encourage alternatives to driving, along with a tax on the automobile, all need to be removed from the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Good evening. My name is Bob Solinger. I'm the Conservation Director for the Audubon Society of Portland. At the last comprehensive plan meeting, you challenged Hayden Island advocates to come up with language to make us feel comfortable that the community and the environment would be adequately protected. And so we went back after that meeting and spent considerable time trying to accomplish just that, trying to come up with a language that would give us assurances that the work that you did over the last several years would be followed through on. After a lot of work, we come to the conclusion it's not possible to do that. You can't simply distill down a plan that was hundreds and hundreds of pages long into a few pithy lines. And it's important to note that in 2010, City Council did not instruct you to do a 300, 500-acre split on Hayden Island. They instructed you to come up with a proposal as to how that might be accomplished. And that proposal was to include zoning designations, plan district regulations, ESEE analysis of infrastructure needs, an IGA, community engagement plan, transportation analysis. You later added a health impact analysis as well. If I had those documents here today, they would be several inches tall. And again, trying to distill that down into a few pithy lines that capture hundreds and hundreds of pages of detail is not possible. It's in that detail that the community has its assurances that the environment and the neighborhoods will truly be protected whether it comes to pollution or other issues. And some folks have suggested that we can just focus on the IGA, one small element of that plan. That's incorrect. For example, protections for wetlands and shallow water habitat are found in the zoning code regulations. Transportation issues are in the planned district section. Protections for light pollution, air pollution, and noise pollution are found in an appendice. They're scattered throughout hundreds and hundreds of pages. So when you take this holistic document and you simply reference it with a few lines about mitigating for the community and the environment, you take us back 5 years and you basically abandon all that work of defining what that meant. When the Port of Portland chose to discontinue the annexation process and the city terminated that effort, what it did was it prevented the community from adopting a holistic package with the details necessary to do it right. A year and a half ago, you stood up to City Council when City Council came to you and said, just give us the plan now. It doesn't matter if it's complete, doesn't matter if all the parts are there, just give it to us and we'll figure it out. You said no, and that was the right answer. But what you're asking us to do now is even worse. You're asking us to go forward, locking in the 300, 500, but without all the detail that we worked so hard to develop to assure the community that, in fact, the environment, the neighborhoods would be protected. And so what we're asking you tonight is not to designate Hayden Island industrial. Leave it out of the industrial equation. That was the choice that was made a year ago. That's the choice we need to live with. Unless we have a holistic package that includes all the protections that we worked so hard to develop, none of this should go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No? Next three.
I have a quick one.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah, one quick question, Bob. We're going to be wrestling with Goal 9 industrial lands, potential shortfall of industrial lands, and the argument's going to come down to Metro, assigned us basically an objective. State law mandates that we have a 20-year land supply. It would be very helpful to us, and I think we can't avoid having this conversation, to have a better understanding of what the land use law actually says. So to the extent that you have information you can bring back, send to us, that we can incorporate it into our work sessions would be very helpful.
Sure. And we'd be happy to do that. We'll provide that. And what we've been told over and over again is that the city does not have to provide acres. It has to provide jobs. Those jobs do not have to come on industrial acres. You can also seek a Goal 9 exception as well. So there are different ways to get around this. They're not easy, but nothing ever is. But we'll provide more information on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Stephen Adam. Lorena Bingham, and Eugene Bingham. Stephen, you want to get started? Yes.
I'm Steve Adam, and I'm here about a building I have at 2345 Southeast Ankeny. I'm requesting that the new zoning plan change the property to commercial or mixed zone use. The pre-1981 plan zoned the property commercial. In 1924, the basement floor was lowered and the new address of 2349 Southeast Ankeny appeared. The basement became a grocery store. The building remained a corner grocery store until the 40s and has had a variety of retail and service businesses since into the 1980s. 2345 Southeast Ankeny and the property across the street, 2348 Southeast Ankeny, have been retail stores or restaurants for many years before 1981 zone change. 2348 Southeast Ankeny is a restaurant today in a residential zone. I lost my ability to have a store because I did not have a store for 2 years after purchasing the wreck of a building in 1989. The plan was to have a store in the basement when I bought the building. I was unable and unaware of the 2-year stipulation in the zoning code, and I spent my time and energy on the 2 apartments up above, and the clock was ticking on my ability to have a coffee shop in the basement. I lost it. I applied for a non-conforming situation in 1994, which I enclosed there in the paperwork, and Kevin Brady sent me back a synopsis of the history of the building, which is in there too. I had, let's see, the 3032 zone map is a hopscotch running down east and west of Ankeny. The zone changes for residential to commercial in the middle of 24th Street, across the street from my property. Please change the hopscotch zone to include my property in the commercial zone. Over the years, many people have contacted me about having a shop in the building, and I understand why. The building is on the corner of a lot abutting a sidewalk and a large street side picture windows, perfect for a small shop. I have to turn them down because I have a store that can't be a store. Let's see, 1924, or even now in 2014, a small shop or store at this address would be an asset to the neighborhood.
Great, thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is Lenore Bingham, and I'm writing this letter addressing you all about our property at 2348 Southeast Ankeny. I'm requesting a designation change of our building from a residential non-conforming commercial use to a conforming mixed-use building. He's our neighbor. We're in very similar situations. Our restaurant, our building that we bought in 2005, we've been tenants at this location since 1994, has always been a restaurant or a grocery store since 1914. And so it's always been grandfathered in, which has been lovely for us to have the use for our business. However, our problem remains that we bought the building in 2005, and we've wanted to do some improvements on the 3rd floor, which is about 3,000 square feet of empty space. And we tried to apply to do these improvements to maybe put in another unit. And we were told we needed like approximately $20,000 to investigate this issue with a big question mark, which we don't have that kind of income to do that. And we realize that this kind of hearing or this proposal with zoning comes up very infrequently, like every 30 years I hear. So here we are, and we're asking for basically, we've always been a mixed-use building, but it's been considered non-conforming. We would like it changed to be conforming. We're on a corner lot, and it is really zigzag, the whole zoning. There's all these new units going down the block with mixed-use buildings, and we actually have been a mixed-use building. So we're really not changing our actual use, we're just changing what we call it. So that's what we're asking you.
So, and the other thing was that just across the street from us, everything is zoned as commercial, or, you know, it's not, it has different zoning as you know, the cutoff point is 24th Avenue, so it actually switches just across the street from us. So yeah, and going back in time, the area, our building was zoned as commercial at one point. I believe in the 80s it was rezoned to a different zoning at that point.
Okay.
So, what else?
One more thing. So our actual zoning is called R2.5. So we're residential non-conforming commercial. And I understand what the hearing is about, but I feel like his building and ours, we are exactly across the street. We're just like, however someone did the zoning, we're both on corner lots. We just got like lost in the system. And we both really just want mixed-use status so that we could do what we can for our future. So, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
The next three, David Hempstein, Tim Helzer, Ronald Ebersol. Started?
My name is David Hampston. I'm Transportation Chair for the Hazelwood Neighborhood Association in East Portland, a neighborhood of roughly 23,000 people. David Douglas High School and Gateway area and Glendoveer Golf Course. I'm also the East Portland representative to the Transportation Budget Advisory Committee for PBOT. So I'm very much in with all the transportation stuff going on. My main focus, my testimony, is on Chapter 9 of the comp plan related to specifically on the transportation systems plan. My concern is that the neighborhoods have yet to see a full project list of everything that's in the TSP. What's in the project list within the current draft comp plan is pretty much the old project list from the 2006 TSP, as well as some items from the recent regional transportation plan with Metro. What's missing in there is the bicycle master plan from 2010, the 1998 pedestrian master plan, the 2012 East Portland in Motion, and the 2009 East Portland Action Plan, among many other things. All of these have actually been adopted already by City Council. And so we were hoping that in this minor updates of the TSP that all of those items would actually be included, but also that we would actually be able to review the project lists, not only in East Portland, but throughout the city, that all neighborhoods and district coalitions would have an opportunity to review those lists before the comp plan hearings actually got started, these hearings. And so I'm asking you to delay the process until those lists actually get presented to the public. All of our neighborhoods need time to actually go over them, and the TSP is vital not only for the comp plan purposes, but it's also extremely vital for future funding related to the SDC list. Transportation SDC list is supposed to be updated next year, and so it's very important that that overall list be made up so that we can select projects for future funding using SDC funds. Thank you very much.
So I have a comment.
Karen?
Yep. So David, I want to say that I appreciate the fact that you have been so on top of these projects. And in fact, this is the David that had sent me the list, Susan, that I had shared with you regarding all of these things that you mentioned that have actually already been adopted.
Correct.
And so one of the things that I know has happened has been that some of the projects have actually been complete. Some of the projects are part of other projects that are also in the TSP now. And some of the projects are MIA, and we need to really kind of look into that. So also to that effect, I wanted you to know that I have a meeting with Mark Lear from PBOT. I think he's PBOT, right?
Correct.
And from our technical advisory committee next week to review that entire list, which I just gave him today again. So I just want you to know we're taking this really seriously and having conversations about that list.
But I want to reiterate, it's not just East Portland. The list you have is the East Portland's related projects.
Right. That's right.
The concern is actually citywide.
Okay.
I'm diligent about doing the East Portland projects, and I know people like Don Bach from Southwest is pretty diligent with Southwest projects. But not every part of the city has that diligency. Somebody actually working, to keep those lists. So it's
agree.
important. Your committee here, the Planning and Sustainability Commission, is effectively the process needed for every district coalition within Portland to review those project lists and to make sure that everything that's supposed to be in there is actually in there, because Metro, quite frankly, doesn't do it, and PBOT has, I know people at PBOT mean well, but they have not been able to keep up with it. It's just simply overwhelming. And to say that the neighborhoods will suddenly get a list just as you're about to pass the comp plan is pretty frightening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
If I could follow up on that. I want to acknowledge that Dave is also, even though he's not a member, has been attending all of the transportation expert group meetings where we are processing the TSP. So I just want to make sure we have the same understanding of the timing. So if I recall correctly, that process is going to release a document around November. And
Correct.
We have our hearing on that in February, I believe. Is that going to give the community enough time to process the document that comes out in November?
The concern within the East Portland communities, and I've talked to some of the people in Southwest as well, is that the comp plan the hearings related to the comp plan will be pretty much over and done with by that time. And so, because the TSP is such a big piece of the comp plan, let's face it, it's a huge chunk of it, that the process for modifying projects or making sure projects are in or out, let alone public inputs as to what projects should be in or out, will be gone. So that's why, for many of us in the neighborhoods, the comp plan updates and the TSP updates have to coincide with one another. It's not do one first and do the other later. It just doesn't work that way because the whole system is integrated. So I mean, and I agree with you in the transportation expert group, there is sort of that process, but even you'll have to admit they are behind. They were planning to do some of these things three or 6 months ago.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
I just want to clarify that there will be a hearing in February on the TSP. It's not my fault. I know it's not working. So in February, there will be a hearing specifically focused on the TSP, and so that will give you an opportunity at that time. And after that, we still will have one more hearing on economic opportunity analysis. And so the door isn't shutting, just because they've done some of the work sessions. We can't do it all at once, so we're going to keep churning through. So I'm hopeful that the November to February time is enough time to at least get most of your comments out that you need to get out.
So just to clarify, what we're trying to, the problem is there's between 600 and 1,200 projects in the TSP list. It's simply overwhelming for neighborhoods even to go through their projects. There's 62 in my neighborhood alone. So the issue is, how do you get through those lists? Because they haven't been officially released by PBOT yet. And so we're all just kind of frantically doing that. And on top of that, you got the mixed-use zoning thing and all the other things. So, but thank you very much for letting me know about that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tim Helzer, and I'm a resident of Hayden Island. More than a year ago, the PSC got it right in examining all of the testimony from expert witnesses and the well-informed public. But now, a year later, the draft comprehensive plan is not getting it right. You recognize that carving out 300 acres from the heart of West Hayden Island's 825-acre total area exposes wildlife to unsafe and unsupportive fringe habitat. So you mitigated for that, but DCP does not. You recognize the development of a marine terminal and related industrial complex would negatively impact juvenile fish along the shallows around West Hayden Island. and you mitigated for that too, but the DCP does not. You recognized much heavier industrial truck traffic across all of Hayden Island would bring extensive pollution to the area, threatening the health of residents. So you mitigated for that too, but the DCP does not. You recognized that much heavier truck traffic through new retail developments on Hayden Island would negatively impact the local economy, and you mitigated for that, but the DCP does not. You recognized these critically important things and voted 7-3 to send them on to the City Council for further consideration, while the DCP recognizes none of these things. You recognize that in the past year, no new evidence has reduced these mitigations, but has increased the need for these mitigations. Only the political pressure to eliminate them has increased. Believe in the evidence that's been put before you. Believe in the original votes. Stand for your facts and convictions, and require the draft comprehensive plan to include every last one of your mitigations for Hayden Island. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Ron Ebersol. I'm a 14-year resident of Hayden Island. Tonight I'm going to talk about East Hayden Island rather than West Hayden Island. On the east end of the island, we have zoning to allow additional building on that end of the island. However, it's a very narrow island, just one way to get on the island through I-5, and then just a 2-lane road accessing the east end of the island, with about 2,000 residents living on the east end of the island now. Currently, there is 2,800 total residents on the island. There is a apartment building being built at the east end of the island. It's on a short road connected to Tomahawk Drive, which is the only road that connects the east end of the island back to the to I-5, and that is a 373 unit development. If you consider 2 people per unit, you're looking at approximately 750 people additional on that end of the island, and you're looking at essentially 27% population increase. And this is a confined area. There's no way for it to expand. There's no way to get any additional road. And currently there's no. During the spring and summer months, that road is frequently narrowed down to a single lane. And there were absolutely no provisions for any expansion put on that development because it had a short local road. We'd like to have that loophole closed. There is only one road accessing that end of the island. There should not be any exceptions. If you're adding additional development there, we need to have further development of the facilities. In addition, there's about, with the current zoning at that end of the island, there's provision for about another 1,000 units. If those 1,000 units are built out, and we know there are plans for building there, if those 1,000 units are built out, that more than doubles the current residency on that end of the island. So we would like to see that the changes that were put into the Hayden Island plan that counted on infrastructure changes coming with the CRC, which, by the way, were all taken out of the CRC by time they shut it down. We would like to see that those provisions are made before there's any additional building out there. And that some of those provisions included height increases to 80 and 90 feet. on a low-lying island. So this is what we'd like to see out there.
Thank you.
Sir,
questions?
Can I ask your advice? I find myself a little bit challenged. A little bit challenged that Metro has still left the CRC in the regional transportation plan, and therefore it's still in our transportation system plan, and we're supposed to plan on the assumption it's going to be there before too long. But a lot of us don't have faith in that. Do you have any thoughts on how we might think about West Hayden Island in the face of that uncertainty?
You mean East Hayden Island?
East Hayden Island, yes, sorry.
Okay. I can tell you about West Hayden Island, too. I think you have to consider the fact that the one road goes through a very narrow part of the island, and it's just strictly a two-lane road. There's no expansion there. In addition, the CRC, with the last plan of record in there, did not have any provision for really improving the flow around the island. So the problem will continue to exist. So in taking it into account, I would say you would have to look at what the last plan was for the CRC. That would be the best thing I could say, although I don't believe it will be built in that form. It doesn't make any sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Jeff Geisler, Nick Silvey, Bruce Campbell. Jeff, you want to start us?
My name is Jeff Geisler. I'm a resident of Hayden Island. I'm the current chair of the Hayden Island Neighborhood Network. I'm here speaking for myself, though. As you work to create a vision for our wonderful city for the next 20 years, we want you to know that your efforts are sincerely appreciated. Looking into the future is a tricky endeavor. Some of your dreams will become clear achievements, but some failures will also be expected. Sustainability is really the emphasis for me, sustaining our city. Planning, we have a lot of planning. We've come a long ways in 100 years. We've gone from farm country to the concentrated city that we have today. In fact, when I moved here in 1970, Portland was a pretty sleepy little town. Dragging Broadway, I think, was the main thing to do. I actually enjoyed it. I had a Volkswagen, though. That was a problem. Anyway, I hope that you, rather than overdeveloping our existing neighborhoods, concentrate on preserving our city, redecorating it, if you will. We have all the wonderful attributes that we currently have and have always enjoyed here. And we have a lot of natural beauty. And I believe polishing and admiring what we have is also a mission of this committee. I hope that you think more about providing a clean environment, improving the skills of our workers, reducing the cost of doing business, discovering a better method of providing affordable health care, maintaining our green spaces, and continuing to search for ways to reduce our use of fossil fuels, which contribute to the poor air quality that we have today. In fact, we've been noticing odors on Hayden Island lately that are coming. I wouldn't even know where they're coming from. Sometimes from Vancouver, sometimes from the oil reprocessing plant that's over there by Heron Lakes Golf Course. That we would like to have somebody look into that. Anyway, that contributing to poor air quality is a problem all over the city. But to me, sustainability for the next 20 years, those are the items that I'd like you to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick?
Nick Sovey. Is this on? I'm the director of Rose Community Development and a member of the East Portland Action Plan. I've been working in outer southeast neighborhoods for the last 30 years. Over that time, East Portland has suffered from planning decisions such as packing the Burnside Transit Corridor with high-density zoning without corresponding commercial land uses, deciding to do light rail on the cheap down the I-205 freeway corridor, depriving neighborhoods such as Gateway and Lentz economic benefits such as those seen along the interstate and in Washington County, and the Outer Southeast Community Plan, which directed half of the city's population growth to East Portland without providing for infrastructure to handle that growth. The recent auditor's report on East Portland showed that before the Outer Southeast Community Plan, residents of East Portland rated their neighborhood livability the same as the rest of the city. Today, East Portland livability is rated by far the lowest of any city district. The new comp plan is an opportunity to fix this planning. We are pleased that the comprehensive plan acknowledges the public investment deficit in East Portland and recommends investing in substandard neighborhoods. We recommend that you follow the East Portland Action Plan recommendation to set a goal that East Portland attain parity with other parts of the city in public facilities and capital spending, encourage city bureaus to prioritize projects in East Portland, and hope that this new comprehensive plan sets the stage for the next 20 years. The city cannot meet its equity goals if it continues to ignore East Portland. For the last 5 years, the East Portland Action Plan has successfully advocated for millions of dollars in public investment in our neighborhoods. EPAP does not want these improvements to come at the cost of displacement of longtime residents, communities of color, and low-income people. EPAP is greatly concerned about gentrification-fueled displacement, which has already begun. We have watched the predictable march of displacement in other East Side neighborhoods, and we hope that the city will act now before it's too late and not repeat the mistakes of the past. The comprehensive plan should act more forcefully about housing affordability. Today, nearly 3 out of 4 Portland renters earning $50,000 a year or less pay more than they can afford for rent. We understand the rationale behind downzoning some neighborhoods, but recognize that downzoning residential is going to increase the upward price pressure on housing. The city should take corresponding steps to increase the supply of both subsidized and unsubsidized affordable housing. Thank you. I really appreciate your service on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay. My name's Bruce Campbell. I'm a resident of the middle section of the Columbia Slough. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to give some testimony today. I might be one of the many people here tonight who's actually read the entire 2035 comprehensive report, and it's a lot of pages to read, but going through it, 2 things kept jumping out at me, and it didn't make sense. In the goals section, and that's spread throughout the report, there's a thing about how we're all going to be fighting climate change, and we're going to be stopping all these terrible things that are happening to the planet by what we're doing in Portland. Now, right alongside that goal is the thing of how we are going to also promote industrial development. And by bringing in more industry into the Columbia Slough area, particularly, among other places, and somehow all these things, even though they are contradictory, are going to fit together, and we're all going to live happily ever after. It's kind of like, throw in a couple of bioswales and bike paths, then we can go ahead and do anything we want and also stop climate change. That's what I drew from that report. It did not seem to have a good logic to it. We can't do both things. As a resident of the Columbia Slough, I'm acutely aware of the habitats that are there, and I'm deeply concerned by the industrial development that they like to do there. Particularly, and I'll speak specifically to this, is the proposed change 296, I believe it's called 297 at one point, what they're doing to the Broadmoor Golf Course, along with the Callwood Golf Course and the other golf courses in that area and adjacent areas. I truly do not understand, as being a resident there and for a long time, why they would want to turn that into an industrial kill zone, particularly when it has a history of treating that area very poorly in the past. I think all of us in this room know that the Columbia Slough is a carcinogenic cocktail of things that's brought to us by industry in the past. And nobody's ever made accountable for that. And there's no guarantee in the future that's going to change. And you can read any of the reports the city puts out, what's in those waters, the DDT, the chlordane, the mercury, the selenium, the zinc, the arsenic. It goes on and on and on. So suddenly, with that history in place, we are going to cannibalize these golf courses and these other green spaces and kind of perform a type of environmental vandalism and reduce the green spaces and repeat a history that we all regret and we know we don't want to repeat. And I really don't understand that. This industrial development part, seems to be like a Trojan horse that's being brought in and saying like, gosh, we have to create 140,000 plus jobs, and again, there's no solid evidence, and I've read the evidence and report that we need that many jobs to develop, but there still isn't solid evidence that this kind of development will contribute to that, or even if it did, create the kind of jobs that we need in Portland that would support the goal of fighting climate change.
Can you wrap it up?
So, I'm kind of perplexed why this area, which is, very, very rich in habitat, very rich, in animals and plants and everything, is going to be, debased and desecrated, by these proposed changes. I don't get it. I don't get why the whole area can't be turned into a green space, with habitats for the animals and the bike paths you're talking about and community farms and things like that. And that would be more in line with this thing of fighting climate change and that's on there. So that's what I'd like to point out is that the goals in the report are internally inconsistent. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you very much. Thank you. Marianne Swab, Belinda Mayer, Joe Rossi.
Sure, I'll get started. My name's Joe Rossi. I live just down the street here at 3839 Northeast 122nd Avenue. I'm talking about a specific property today, the undeveloped farmland that I actually spoke about at the previous meeting. It's really nice we're having the meeting here because we all have a chance to see it when we leave tonight. But the property that is between the high school, middle school, and the Shaver grade schools is part of the Rossi, Justo, Gary families. It's undeveloped. Right now it's currently zoned mixed use and commercial. Changing it to a light industrial zoning, to me, just seems like it'd be a disservice to our community. We all talk about walking communities and having density and walking to stores and having families not having to have a car, second car, or even a first car. We have that opportunity here. At some point the property would be developed. I think it would be a disservice to our community to have a light industrial zoning there with industrial properties. I understand the goal is to have jobs and it's to develop properties where there's high paying jobs, but to do it, it would become an island of light industrial around really all residential. And to take that component and develop it that way would really adversely, negatively impact our community, I feel like. So that's really all I have to say. I appreciate you guys all doing a good job for our city and the ability to have public testimony.
So I have a comment.
Karen?
Yeah, I'm really happy to see Joe here with his brother and his mom. They've been incredible supporters of the Park Rose School District. So, Joe, my question for you is, how long has your family been in this area?
Yeah, a good question.
Yeah.
We've been farming in Portland since 1880. We moved to Park Rose in 1900. I'm the fourth generation here in Park Rose, and my daughter Gabrielle and Michael Rossi, my brother's son, and my brother, those two are the fifth generation here. So, and we're proud to be here. We plan on always being here. We just want to have it, if it does get developed, I want it to be something really, really nice for our community, at the highest use and the best for our community and our neighbors. So it'd be a good legacy for my dad and grandfather and great-grandfather.
Yeah, and in case you want to go into the gym's named for his dad.
Thanks.
Thanks. Marianne?
Thank you. Number one, I want to say thank you for extending the public involvement process so we can really study it. To try to go through these types of materials in just a short time is awesome, and knowing that it's open until March 13th is truly a gift for everyone, and I thank you for listening to us at the last meeting and taking us seriously and extending it. What I'd like to talk about tonight are what I see disconnects between Metro, between Multnomah County, between OMSI, between the Southeast Quadrant and our Portland plan. Number 4, improve nature areas and open spaces. That would include West Hayden Island and our golf courses. What's missing here is a platform when we invite new industry to come in. They destroy our green land, they want it clean, and then they leave it brown, and then those of us sitting in this room have to pay to clean up the mess. Maybe we need a bond set by those industries so that they would pay closer attention to keeping our city clean as they found it. That's number 1. Metro sent out a mailer the other day. They do talk about Mother Nature, but no one talks about the Bull Run Water, waiver.org. Multnomah County is right now frantically looking for land for a courthouse. And then we have the Southeast Quadrant. I'd really like to focus in on that a little bit, our Central East Side Industrial District. The Camel Nose went under the tent last week with the goat blocks. That was an EX zone. People in the public don't know what these definitions mean. Well, it went from a 7-story apartment complex to a 5-story complex over a most welcomed grocery store, I guess a hardware store, and the rest is TBA. But also 242 families are moving in. And when you listen to lift truck drivers and bicycles scooting underneath, and you know there's baby strollers and kids moving in and noise 24/7. Also in the Southeast Quadrant, 2 more blocks are coming. The meeting I attended with the public comment was a realtor really concerned about investing in the Central East Side industrial area. They want more apartments. And then, of course, there's OMSI. I just got a quick note that, thank goodness, OMSI's concept plan is that a concept. There will not be 5 10-story apartments going in over there. I'm wondering what we can do collectively to get Multnomah County to talk to OMSI, maybe site their courthouse there, perfect location, or the ODOT property next to the Clark Lewis restaurant. And when we talk about the Southeast Quadrant and we talk about proud ground and we talk about low income and affordable housing, please, please, please reconsider the air quality and noise quality. I attended a meeting near the Clinton Triangle in the Ford building. We had to stop talking. We couldn't hear each other in a room because of the train and the train whistles going through our city. And to put housing, low-income families that close to a railroad track, aside from the crude oil trains coming through, the coal trains coming through, Amtrak, and all the freight line truckers in and out of there, I'm not so sure that I think we need to rethink these things. I don't know who's on the design committee, what planet they live on, but I assure you, I don't think they're living next to a train whistle. Nor do I think any of us, at least I do hear it. I'm on Southeast 38th Avenue, and I hear those whistles constantly, and I'm 38 blocks from the railroad. So please, let's try to think more for our kids. They're in overcrowded classrooms. We have a workforce out there that sleep deprivation is real. Everyone has a right to sleep. Thank you.
My name's Belinda Mayer. I'm the Executive Director of Serendipity Center. Our campus is 14815 Southeast Division. I also want to thank the Bureau and the Commission. It's been a really gratifying and inclusive process to be part of the comp planning. Chris Scarzello came out and visited our campus and solicited input from our staff and our kids, and we were proud to be included. Serendipity is a nonprofit therapeutic school. We serve the 20 school districts surrounding the metro area and provide special education and mental health treatment to children whose developmental or neurological or behavioral or psychiatric issues prevent their participation in public school. We've grown. We've been there since 1979 in the same location. We've grown incrementally during that time. We've accomplished some expansion and renovation projects during that time. We're located on 5 consecutive parcels of land on the northeast intersection of 148th and Division. Our existing comp plan designation range from general commercial to multi-dwelling and townhouse use. Under the proposed update to the comp plan, all of our parcels would change to mixed-use civic corridor. And the testimony we wanted to give tonight is that we fully support this proposed change to our designation and to the tentative proposed zone change to general commercial. Right now, and it's early in the school year, we are operating at near capacity. We really don't believe that it serves our mission or our partnering school districts to turn children away when they need a place for special education and for mental health integrated into that school day. And by changing the comp plan designation and the resulting zone to commercial, it allows us to expand the campus without the conditional use permit that's currently required to do that. In our conversations with Chris and in the comp planning solicitation of input, we were identified as an anchor of the outer southeast neighborhood. We'd never really used that label or thought about ourselves that way, but in considering that, I think that's kind of true. And we feel proud to do that and want to continue to be there in that neighborhood. And we appreciate the chance to give our testimony.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much. Jeremy O'Leary, Claire Coleman Graham, and Cassie Cohen. Cassie Cohen, that's you. Claire Coleman. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jeremy O'Leary. I am the co-chair of the East Portland Action Plan, although I'm just representing myself here. And so I will be submitting detailed comments. My comments here are much more big picture. I would definitely applaud the work that's been happening with the Portland Plan, now the Comprehensive Plan on community resiliency. I would encourage the view that emergency preparedness, community resiliency, and long-term sustainability are the same thing on different timelines. So in terms of how you organize things, it maps out. That's where things like well-insulated houses, vegetable gardens, rainwater catchment systems, bikes, and bike infrastructure, they're all the right answer for different reasons. One thing that I definitely see is strongly needed, is basically, communities after a disaster, earthquake, fires, whatever, these communities don't actually get back online until the schools are back up and running. And so I'd encourage the view of like schools as community centers and do the work necessary to seismically upgrade them and start having basically, because the reality is people will be, after a large earthquake, people will be camping in the parks. That's what happens time and time and time again. So I would encourage planning on it. And specifically, I applaud the work that I saw with the additional backup water supply that's going in, that's being discussed. There is no reference in the comprehensive plan whatsoever around what happens when the sewer system's offline for a long period of time. One thing you could do to actually stack functions is if you position like wood chips at designated areas, community gardens, schools, wherever, use the wood chips and the 2-bucket method of human manure management that's actually up on the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management's website. You do need to do some other things around how do you make vector control, but that's one of the things where those piles of wood chips, it's a zoning issue, that's why I'm bringing it up here. And it's also a way, so if you need to do erosion management, that's also a pretty effective way of handling it, just having the wood chips available. I would also echo the sentiment of Representative Reardon, David Hempson, and Nick Sovey about a lot of things going on in East Portland, particularly the TSP. They already said it well. I won't repeat what they said. And yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Claire Coleman Evans, and I'm representing Bradamon Neighborhood Association. I'd like to thank you very much for extending the public testimony. That was my first thing. The second thing would be to put neighborhood associations back into the comp plan glossary. It is no longer there. And also, I would like demolition deferred to as removal of 50% or more of a current structure, and also replace residential demolition permits with deconstruction permits so that we can actually do recycling instead of just having houses torn down without any recycling done. Basically, it's done very quickly, repealing the K1 plan, restoring the mandated 35-day delay, and having the neighborhood notification put in there so that developers cannot apply for a single-family home permit and then pull the permit and then consequently demo the house, and there's no notification to the neighbors. And also, as far as complete neighborhoods, it says that we should be able to access goods, service, and needed for daily life. But in Southwest Portland, due to the topography, it's very difficult for even our kids to walk to school because we don't have sidewalks. It's very difficult because there is really no, we have Southwest Community Trails, but there is no good means to get around.
Thank you. Cassie.
Hi, my name is Cassie Cohen. I'm the director of Groundwork Portland, a nonprofit that works with communities to engage them in decision-making around how to clean up land and transform it into community assets. And we're also working on how to clean up the Portland Harbor Superfund. I am also representing, our organization also helps coordinate the East Portland Action Plan Brownfields Subcommittee. So I'm here to talk about a couple of issues within the comp plan. One is brownfields and the other is town centers. Brownfields, for us, we understand the city's long-term sort of vision about how to transform brownfield sites into job centers and to provide more land for industrial job opportunities. We, being connected to other national groups that are working on community-based brownfields redevelopment, also see an opportunity in those smaller neighborhood sites located, embedded within communities that may not be suitable for industrial use, future industrial use, and engaging communities within their neighborhoods in determining what the best use of those sites could be. So we have been doing this for many years, and in East Portland now, over the past year and a half, this conversation has come up around a potential future town center identified in the comp plan, located on Division Street and 122nd. This potential future town center has a brownfield site kind of smack dab within that intersection. And it is kind of a case study for us and for the city, I think, right now. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity site for the city and the Planning and Sustainability Commission to think about how can the comp plan, that's this critical sort of long-term commitment to the people and to the public, as well as to the state and the city. How can we make it real and come up with some pilot projects and some early actions that really give the community some hope? And so this particular town center, there's been some indication that the brownfield may turn into a future fast food drive-through. And to residents that we've talked to over a year and a half, youth, students from David Douglas High School, and adults in the neighborhood, immigrants, refugees. This is not their vision. This is not their vision for yet having another fast food drive-through in a 20-block radius where there's already many others. So how can this city and the PSC and the comp plan help facilitate some early pilot projects and have it kind of be in the spirit of creating East Portland parity and leveraging the Transportation Systems Project and the Powell Division Rapid Transit Project, and working with Metro and working with the county to come up with something that East Portland can be really proud of and can call their town center and have an anchor, maybe a tenant or multiple tenants within that one brownfield site that they can really honor and feel proud of. So that's really what I'm here to say.
Thank you. Don? Hold on.
Quick question on the Brownfields Town Center site. Does your organization provide funding alternatives for cleaning up brownfield sites?
Well, we help access resources. We don't have our own, fund reserved for this purpose, but we do help access resources from the city. We work very closely with the City Brownfields program, with the state, Business Oregon, and even EPA. We have a close partnership with EPA Brownfields.
You provide advisory services for those efforts.
Yeah, we partner with the community, we partner with businesses, we partner with government, but try to have kind of a community-based approach to this. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Deborah and John Field and Don Bach.
Can you hear me? We forgot to put Kamala on our list with us. Is it all right? She's part of our proposal. We'll split our 3 minutes together. I forgot to put her name down.
Okay, Don, why don't you go first?
Thank you. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for listening to us. And I want to add to what David and Chris were talking about. First of all, I'm Don Bach. I live in Hillsdale. I'm a professional civil engineer. I live at 6495 Southwest Burlingame Place. I lived there for 40-some years. I am president of Southwest Trails PDX, a nonprofit. I'm a member of the Portland Transportation Advisory Committee. I'm on the Transportation Experts Committee with Chris. And I've been on a lot of other stuff related to transportation over the years. And I want to jump in right away on terms of what Chris and David were talking about on the TSP. There's an awful lot of stuff in play in the TSP. I would suggest that you consider having a hearing just to talk about the scope and then what's included in what they're going to evaluate, because there's plans all over the place that people have said, this is not in, and staff is sort of, oh dear, well, that's not in, we don't need to do that, and so on. And we need to have some sorting going on here so we don't end up at the end saying it's not in and everybody's upset because their projects weren't considered. I think, having staff give you a preliminary cut at this and then go back and evaluate this stuff would be a way of solving that, because you don't want to spend a whole mountain of time on stuff that's not going to get considered. But on the other hand, the stuff that should be ought to be. Also, with regard to Mark Lear's efforts on doing the street fee, there's all kinds of projects in there too. A lot of them are small, and I don't think a lot of those are in a TSP either. And do they need to be? Because we can spend a fortune on staff evaluating a $50,000 project or a $100,000 project. So we need to think about this in a little different way, in my opinion, so we have some efficiency in the operations. I came here tonight to talk about 3 things. I'm going to give the first one first because it's quick. IR zones. You guys, not you, your predecessors zoned, or the city zoned, Wilson High School as an IR zone in 1997 as part of the Hillsdale Town Center Plan. I was a part of working on that. The understanding we had was that there was going to be a planning process, so we would have an understanding of what the outside of that school was going to look like. So we could, and by having an IR thing, as I understand the rules, and I'm not expert in this, they got a waiver from the design review. What's happened is there's been no plan, and they've gotten a waiver on everything, so we don't get any kick at the cat on anything they're doing there. That's not right. So anytime you do IR, I think you need to say, and I would ask you to do this immediately, take away the IR zone for Wilson, put it back in the design zone, and anyone else you got in the city that's in the IR zone doesn't have a plan. And then as the plans are developed, give them the classification IR. Because otherwise, you know, and I'm not pointing fingers here, but things happen in the city where things don't get done because of XYZ. There's no motivation for them to do it if they can skate through without any reviews at all. So that's the first issue. Second issue, and I've read this plan. It took me, you know, quite a few hours to read the plan and cover to cover. There's a major thing. I think the fire department must have had a big call because they didn't do anything on this whole plan. And I'm talking about wildfire. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had a real scare in Hillsdale. We had a fire between Terwilliger and Capitol Highway, a small area, but it burned intensely. You can see the bare rock. It caused enough people to be alarmed that they pulled an alarm at Wilson because they thought the full building was on fire. And the point isn't that was, you know, Wilson was in danger. The people that live in that area were in great danger because I was around a fire when I was a younger person that blew up from nothing to 30,000 acres.
Can you wrap it up, Don?
Yeah, excuse me. I haven't even gotten to my main points. So, you know, the point is you need to address wildfire in here, and I'll send you some suggestions, you know, points all the way through there. The final rule I want to do, and I'll send this to you in just written document, but move section 8.77 transportation in its entirety. I'm sorry, move section 8.77 from parks to transportation entirety, because that addresses trails. Basically what this involves, if you don't do that, you got parks and transportation all commingled trying to figure out all this stuff. Makes no sense at all. You're adding a lot more complexity, and I can give you a lot of history. It's been very, very difficult working with parks. Our group has had a huge, difficult time working with them, and I'll give you some great examples of where some of the things they've said and done made no sense at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Deborah?
Yeah.
John and...
Yeah, I'm John Field, and this is my wife, Deborah.
Kamala Chitri.
And this is our neighbor, Kamala.
Okay.
Kamala Charity. We've already submitted written testimony, and we just came here tonight to bolster, just to talk about it some more, what our proposal is. So what we want to talk about is the Beaumont Business District, specifically the area on the south side of the street from about 45th up to 50th. Now this area at one time was commercial before the 1981 plan. And ideally what we would like to do is propose to have that whole south side of the street turned back to mixed use or you know, with some commercial use on it. And there are many reasons for that. I mean, one of them might be, well, Deborah will talk about that. She's the former vice president of the Beaumont Business Association. She might speak to that, why. You know, it's good for business. It's also good for the neighborhood. But because that might be too much for the commission to tackle, we would like to break it down into a few properties. Now, one of them is our property, which is at 48th and Fremont, and then Kamala and her husband own the property on the adjacent property on the other side of the intersection. Now, on our side, we bought our property 5 years ago, and we run a business. It is Paper Jam Press, and we run right now with a legal status for non-conforming use. And the city considers that we are commercial, apparently because we pay commercial water rates. We also are on Portland maps written down as commercial use. We would just like to make our property conforming. I think that's it for me. I'll pass the microphone to Deborah.
What I would like to add to this conversation is Portland is made up of these wonderful neighborhood business districts. And we're in one of them, Beaumont Village. And it's really a charming part of this city. I think we have some weaknesses in that, and one is that, and I know we're not alone in Beaumont Village, that we don't have consistent, adequate zoning. And like John has spoken to, the whole north side of Fremont from 41st to 52nd is commercial. And there's these patches on the south side of the street that are combination residential and storefront. The statistics show that businesses are more successful when they have adequate foot traffic. And when you don't have retail on both sides of the street, it really hurts that. And a lot of us in the business world as small business owners, we're still struggling to make it. And part of that is getting customers and having a city that really supports small businesses. Portland is all about shopping local. And I think probably most of you know that probably 90% of our businesses are small businesses. We have 10 or fewer employees. So I'm just asking you guys to really think about this in the comprehensive plan and keep these beautiful neighborhood business districts vital. And part of that is get the zoning right so we can build more retail storefront, charming local businesses to keep this part of our city successful.
And wait a minute, am I on here?
How much time do we have?
We're still green. I just wanted to say that there are two other neighbors besides Kamala that will be addressing the committee on this.
As well.
Well, anyway.
We are Ramod and Kamala. So first I'm shaking. And we are currently renting our house, but the find is more difficult to find a good tenant because of the just opposite of our house is the restaurant there, and it's open till 10, 11 at the night, and it's hard to find a good tenant there, and so we own a small store in Northwest 23rd Avenue in Himalayan Arts and Handicraft. So we were thinking of opening the store in our own plot, because we were renting the store right now. So just 2 months before that, our store owners, property owners, sell to someone else, and then they told us that they raised $1,200 right away. They say either you leave it or you pay it. So I was thinking if it's possible to have our store in our own land, it will be, we don't have to struggle that much. And it's like, it's very, even the property is located right in a commercial place. Okay. So I was, we are requesting you to please look forward.
Howard, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Beaumont is, in my opinion, typical of a lot of communities in Portland that started as one thing and began to evolve. When I think of Beaumont, to be honest with you, I think of 42nd and Fremont, nothing much beyond that, because that's the way it was for a long period of time. You don't have to respond. I'm just generally saying that we have to be cognizant of a lot of the testimony we're hearing today is around specific zoning concerns around a neighborhood that's expanded over time. And I think we need to be listening and sensitive to that. And I want you to know we are.
Thank you.
I have just a question. Full disclosure, I live in that neighborhood and go up and down Fremont frequently. So you're asking for commercial zoning. Are you looking for mixed use with housing on top?
Yes, mixed use.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next three, Daryl Disper, Don Grotting, And Frida Christopher. Huh? No. We've got the next three are the last three. Daryl?
Okay. I'm going to paraphrase a movie. I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. Do you guys believe in private property? The way I look at you, boy, you put zones down, you're trying to tell people how to live. Why do you care what my house looks like? Why did anybody care? Why did a neighbor 3 blocks away, complain about my damn house, what color I painted or what kind of roof I have on it? It's none of your business. My nephew is building a house right now on his in-laws' property. He spent $18,000 on permits. I'm a civil engineer. When I do a house plan, it doesn't need to be checked by some incompetent planner for 6 weeks before he puts his rubber stamp on it to say that he could build that house. That's foolish. The gas company shoved the line in there and they knew where to put it. PGE put a pole up into it because it was bad, because it was considerably off the road. They know how to do it. He's got his own sewer line. There's a well on his in-laws' property where he takes the water. Now tell me what kind of services we got from a bunch of lazy planners. There isn't any. You're trying to be too intimate, when doing things. Like I said, I'm angry. I just don't look, like that. I'm angry at the PDC, for taking land and not turning it back to the schools. I mean, look at that. The state of Oregon passed a law saying you can only have 15% for PDC. How come they always got, when one of them goes quiet, then they get another one? 14.999999999%. It's going to be for urban growth. All they care about is their real estate commissions. I'm really angry about the whole damn government. Am I out of time? Good.
Thank you.
Chair Bach, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Don Grotting. I'm the superintendent of the David Douglas School District. I'm here to ask you to significantly reduce or eliminate any more high-density housing in the David Douglas School District. Just a little story, David Douglas School District is larger than it's ever been right now, with approximately 11,000 students. I have kindergarten class sizes of 33 and 34, core high school classes of 40, and we have no more classrooms. We have no more infrastructure to support any more students. In addition, just as the community goes, we do not have food outlets, grocery outlets that support our children and families of color and poverty. So would ask you to really consider, once again, either significantly reducing or eliminating any more high-density housing. And I just want to say, I'm talking specifically for the David Douglas School District, not other school districts in East County. But we are at capacity. We can take no more students. Thank you.
A quick question on that. So the housing, would one-bedroom or studios, or is it just high density of any type?
High density of any type, I would say, you know, anything that's going to bring any more children. I know that a lot of, we have so many of our children living with grandparents now, and it starts out as no kids maybe in the dwellings, but it ends up with students in the dwelling, and I do not have one elementary classroom in my district to put another class in. We're just at capacity, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the commissioners for this opportunity to provide testimony. My name's Frida Christopher, and I'm currently the chair for David Douglas School Board. I'm completing my 24th year on the David Douglas School Board, and I've lived in the district and volunteered in the district since 1976. In addition to that, I am also an active member of the East Portland Action Plan and co-chair of the Housing Subcommittee. I also was a member of the Gateway URAC during the life of that committee. But today I would like to speak on behalf of the David Douglas School Board. As Superintendent Grotting has shared, we are at capacity. I have 3 items I would like the Commission to consider. First, we'd like to strengthen the language in the comprehensive plan and the citywide system plan for coordinating with school districts regarding growth. East Portland Action Plan has recommended that the state law ORS 195.110 be referenced in the comprehensive plan with written explanation of how the city plans to integrate and implement the accommodation of the city's population growth in partnership with school capacity. We also would like to request that policies directed to enhance coordination between the city and all school districts be elevated in importance in the comprehensive plan with clearly articulated integration of city zoning, assumptions of growth in the different geographies of the city, locations and current and future capacity of schools, all equitably distributed throughout the city. This stronger language in the reference of the ORS could be inserted in Chapter 8 of the draft comp plan and in Chapter 2, page 23 of the citywide system plan. Secondly, we'd like greater communication with school districts on the impact of zoning changes and consideration of reducing additional capacity in David Douglas. We would like to understand the proposed changes in housing units in comparison with the total capacity with current designations. We know they have made some changes. What we don't understand is exactly how the total capacity that allows now is in relationship to the changes that have been made already in the comp plan. Because these units, proposed units, do not necessarily equate to the total capacity. School districts, especially ones with capacity issues like David Douglas, need to be informed of the potential impact in case we experience another building boom in East Portland as we did in the 90s and the early 2000s. Lastly, in regard to downzoning, I'd like to recommend zoning change in the Gateway Transit area. As a school district that is predominantly residential, there should be an additional reduction in high-density zoning and an increase in commercial zoning to increase the potential for jobs for our residents and reduce projected student population growth. At this time, the comprehensive plan does not indicate any zoning changes from residential to commercial in Gateway Regional Center. The area between Northeast Pacific and Gleason is currently zoned with the highest density. This area should be ideal for a commercial hub in our district and should allow for greater employment opportunities rather than the currently zoned high-density designation that allows for housing. Due to our current capacity issues, it is imperative that David Douglas capacity issues be addressed in the citywide system plan and the comprehensive plan in a fully informed and articulated manner. Again, we'd like to address that we are talking about David Douglas, not the other schools. That I know there's some that have spoke about not downzoning, and we're talking reallocating, taking them out of David Douglas where we don't have capacity, and putting the higher density in school districts that have excess capacity. I'm working with housing, so we're concerned about displacement as well, and we're trying to figure out a balance on how to do that in East Portland without overcrowding our schools. Or I should say, we're already overcrowded, but as most of you know, it takes a lot of land to build a school. I think we're between 5 and 7 acres on an elementary, about 15 on a middle, about 40 acres on a high school. You don't find that kind of land in David Douglas at all. And we definitely don't want to take eminent domain and displace our families just to put in a school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Don?
A quick question for David Douglas. And Don, in today's world, is the district as a service provider notified by the city when there's a housing project proposed, or does it just happen and the kids show up to enroll?
That has greatly improved. This is my 5th year in David Douglas, and I think in the last 2 years, that service has greatly improved, so we are getting notified.
Good, so there's a communication link.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yes, the East Portland Action Plan Education Subcommittee advocated for that, and the Planning Bureau was able to provide that to us. It doesn't tell us how many units, well, it tells us how many units, but not the size of the units. So we have to follow up on that, because your question regarding multifamily, senior housing's fun. In fact, we thank the Human Solutions recent development when they got the funds from the Gateway Urban Renewal to build it on Gleason and 99th. As it's senior and it's workforce housing, so it's small 1-bedrooms and studios to minimize the impact on our schools.
So you, in essence, you have a formula. You know how many students will be generated by a proposed housing project, and you can communicate your concerns back to the city. Is that accurate?
We have a communication process, but I'll go back to what Frida says, is trying to determine exactly the size of those units, and that's been a little bit late
there's some guesswork there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing I'd make a comment about is today the Fair Housing Advocacy Commission, which was just created by the Portland Housing Bureau, had its first meeting connecting housing and education today. So one of the things that we talked about was this issue around communication, Dawn, that we have been getting, and also communication around when Section 8 housing vouchers have reached their ceiling, when some of the area developers have raised their prices on the housing units, getting that kind of information to the school districts. Yeah. So that's the first of many conversations we hope to be having with the Fair Housing Commission.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next are Emily Seltzer, Lori Kovac, Wendy Newton,
Hi, my name is Emily Seltzer, and I would like to provide a comment about the proposed rezoning of the former Whitaker School site on 42nd Avenue. The community feedback received by the comprehensive plan team included this comment. Transitions and neighborhood context are important between the zoning on the main streets and development elsewhere. Step downs and setbacks are important to mitigate impacts on livability. That comment is especially relevant to the proposed rezoning and future redevelopment of the Whitaker School site. Step-downs and setbacks should be utilized to maintain the residential character of the neighborhood and preserve the livability of the houses on 39th Avenue and Simpson Street, including my home, which is directly adjacent to the site. Open space should be maintained as much as possible in keeping with the character of Fernhill Park and the surrounding neighborhood. Appropriate transitions from any commercial development along 42nd to the neighborhood behind the parcel are essential to maintaining the character of the neighborhood. So if possible, the comprehensive plan should indicate that the guiding objectives for the transition from the school site to the adjacent residential zones should be drawn from the residential zones themselves. Height, setbacks, and allowable uses in the areas adjacent to residential zones should ensure an orderly and harmonious transition and avoid negative impacts on solar access, peace and quiet, and odors. In particular, parking, loading, and dumpster access should be specifically prohibited as transition area uses. Thank you. It's right at 42nd and Killingsworth. Used to be Adams High School.
Wendy?
Yeah, I'm Wendy Newton. I live in Alameda in Northeast Portland. And it's a lovely neighborhood that's been written beautifully about by Beverly Cleary, and several books by Paul Deutscher, who's a historic preservationist, has written beautifully about the quality of the houses in our neighborhood and the bungalows. And so I'm here because I'm concerned about some of the language in the draft comp plan regarding the residential units. I believe the language is too narrow and will be short-sighted. And I'll just rattle off some of the policies that I think have this language that I think is pretty restrictive and won't serve the city well. In Chapter 4, 4.24 talks about protecting and restoring historic buildings on adopted inventories. And 4.36 talks about encouraging the protection and restoration of high-quality historic buildings. And then 4.38 speaks of protecting from demolition significant historic structures. And I'm glad there's language in here recognizing that these are important buildings and do need to be recognized. However, there are many dwelling units in Northeast Portland and probably throughout Portland that aren't on registers or nationally recognized and still need to be recognized and protected. Otherwise, I really believe this is short-sighted. So what I would propose or recommend is that language be softened up a little bit, specifically something to the effect of preserving, protecting, restoring those dwelling units that contribute to the history and character of the Portland neighborhoods as they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori?
I'm Lori Kovac. I live in the inner southeast Portland near Lone Fir Cemetery. And I live in that neighborhood because I believe in density. I actually live in a duplex myself. I support Portland's concepts about density to encourage saving the open space around the city. But I want to make sure that when you're considering the comp plan that you're spreading that density throughout the city. I feel like a little bit too much of it has been pushed into inner southeast Portland. And I want you to really seriously consider the upzoning that you're doing because we have plenty of density already. In my particular neighborhood, I know that there's upzoning planned, and I'm not in support of that. And when you think about density, I think you should be very careful about your parking policy because often when I hear my neighbors concerned about what's happening in the neighborhood, they're actually not concerned about more housing. They're concerned about the fact that they can no longer park in front of their own homes. And when you, in our neighborhood, there's several recent apartments that don't have any parking that was part of their process. And when you do that, you're actually making the neighboring homeowners pay for the parking that you were not making the developers put as part of their properties. And you're decreasing the quality of life of the homeowners that can no longer park in front of their homes. And that developer, he develops that building and he just moves out, he just moves on, and his life is not affected. And those of us that believe in density, you still need to consider our quality of life, and so I want you to strongly consider parking, allowing parking or requiring parking in places where you're adding density. Also, I'd like you to really support the ADU process. I think by adding the accessory dwelling units throughout the city, you're providing really affordable housing that by definition is going to be really well designed because the homeowner's living there and they don't want to decrease their quality of life by putting a cheap low-income housing thing with them, but they are affordable, and it's a way to get student housing and housing for single people and lower income people into all neighborhoods, and I really support that process. And I appreciate the chance to testify.
Thank you. The last three, if anybody else wishes to testify, one more, that you provide Julie, fill out a card and provide it to Julie. Aisha Lorenz, Janet Lindstead, Willie Myers,
I was not able to attend the meeting that was downtown.
Your name?
Aisha Lorenz Al Said. I missed, I was out of town, and so I'm speaking about a piece in Southwest Portland. If this designation of R20 is implemented, it will create a hardship, a large hardship for me and my family personally, as well as others in the same area, I believe. I have about 2 acres on Patton Road. We've had this property as well as the property to the east of it when my grandfather purchased it to be a rental income property in the 1940s. My father continued as same, selling half in the late 70s. I inherited it 12 years ago. And some years ago, we began the process with engineers to divide it into about 5 10,000 square foot lots. It's currently R10. Then land values dropped dramatically, so I decided not to continue at this time, as we would barely break even after all the division costs, even though we would retain the original antique farmhouse as a rental, and possibly a home for my daughter in the future, which she's interested in. So even though we put nearly $40,000 into it, we halted the process. Basically, this new proposed designation would certainly not help the rental or housing shortage in Portland. And I'm really surprised to find this has even been suggested. Although we certainly praise and appreciate green spaces, still, if our spaces are divided intelligently and well, it could remain beautiful with our R10 original plans. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe an R20 designation that they hope to put on it would increase our property taxes. So we are very against an R20 designation.
Thank you. Jenna?
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. I did not plan to speak tonight. But after listening to Don Grotting, I felt it was very important that I do. I've lived in the neighborhood, David Douglas School District. I live on 139th in Burnside. Proposed plan right now is to take my neighbor's home and the 2 others on Burnside and, level them. Put mixed use on the bottom and build 3 stories up. But I beg you not to do this for several reasons. One, personally, I don't want it, but let's take me out of the equation. It doesn't make sense. For one, there's no room in the school district. I also work for David Douglas, and I am one of the kindergarten assistant teachers, and I can tell you we don't have room for 1 more student in our classroom. There's not an empty cubby left. Also, we don't have enough grocery stores. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the only grocery stores that we have around David Douglas School District is 122nd and Gleason, and then you have to go clear over to 148th and Fred Meyers, or you have to drive to 102nd and Gleason. Albertson's pulled out on 122nd and Division, and the only thing that is even remotely close to us would be Winco on 122nd and Halsey. None of it's close to us. When I moved in 27 years ago, there was Rose's on 122nd and Gleason. There was the U.S. Bank. There was Hallmark with the post office. There was Keno's. They're all gone now. I'm happy that we're able to get Section 8 and second chance mortgages for people that really need it. But what happened is that people came in with not a lot of money, and the the retailers knew that, and so they pulled out. If you go to 122nd and Gleason, it's a ghost town. There's nothing there anymore. Just a couple little businesses. That's it. If you want to make jobs for our community, get some big guys in there. But I suggest that if you're going to do it for our neighborhood, you're going to need to do stores that have big bins, like Winco, where people in our neighborhood can afford it. Our kids at our school get free breakfast and lunch, and they have the Sun program so they can have dinner at night. They can't afford a Trader Joe's. They can't afford the mixed use that you want to put right next to my property. They say, oh, we'll put little boutiques or little shops and we'll build 3 stories up. Well, guess what? No one can afford it. We have a garden right next, 2 houses away from me, there's a garden. Because if you're willing to work, you can get a free bag of groceries each week if you're willing to put in so many hours to get those groceries. That's what my kids at my school do. So their parents do it so they can eat. A lot of kids come up to me and say, Mrs. Lindstedt, I don't have any food in our house. Then I go to the school counselor and I make sure they have food. My point is that this high residential area that you guys want to do next to my house, put more people, well, there's no jobs for them. There's no grocery stores to shop at. And it's not going to service them. If you want to service them, you need to take care of Gleason, Menlo. Go down there, get those business people in there, get some stores in there, because I guarantee you when the mothers put their children at school, they would love to help to provide. They want to work for minimum wage. They would love to do nothing more and then come back and pick up their kid. That's what we need in our neighborhood. And I hope that you will take what I have to say in consideration, because I can tell you in 27 years, I've seen it change dramatically. And it is not the thriving business area that it once was. But we have doubled already or more in that neighborhood, and we really cannot afford to have any more people come because there just isn't enough places for them to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Baugh and the Portland Planning and Sustainability Commission. My name is Willie Myers. I'm the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Columbia Pacific Building and Construction Trades Council. The Columbia Pacific Building and Construction Trades Council would like to recognize the City of Portland. Sorry, I'm going to hold that back a little bit. City of Portland for its work to date on the comprehensive plan update that will guide the city's growth and development over the next 20 years. Long-term planning is critical to creating the good jobs, strong economy, and healthy communities that we all desire, and for that we commend you. The CPBCTC, sorry, I'm just going to shorten that to Columbia Pacific, represents more than 15,000 members in 25 different skilled crafts, working men and women in the local construction industry. We are committed to professionalism and quality. We have 9 training centers located throughout the Portland metro area, where we train thousands of apprentices and journey-level workers. We spend over $10 million each year, every penny of it from the private sector, to provide our members with access to acclaimed training programs for the construction industry. We believe that, along with our affiliates across Oregon, we have created the most skilled local workforce in the world, all without public money. The Columbia Pacific Building Trades is fully committed to making Portland a great place as it can be. Our members are a vital part of Portland. We live, work, and raise our families here. We provide good family wage jobs. We build the foundation of the city and its economy. We are proud to call Portland our home and to be a part of the diverse communities that make up our city. With that in mind, we have reviewed the comprehensive plan and draft map. We believe the plan contains many strong points as well as some areas for additional consideration. As you move forward with the process, we urge you to adopt the following principles. 1, preserve and expand industrial land in the city of Portland. The importance of industrial land and industrial land reserves cannot be overstated. A large supply of industrial land is a key component of any economy that values good middle-class jobs. Maintaining industrial land is necessary to preserve current jobs and economic activity, as is having additional land available to attract new economic activity and jobs. We live in an area with tight constraints on land, natural and human-made, and it is critical that every bit of existing industrial land be preserved as industrial. Number 2, prioritize projects that have existing and/or established funding sources. Everyone was hit hard with the recent recession, particularly in the construction industry. While the local economy continues to improve, many of our workers are still struggling to find work. In order to help get our members back to work and allow them to support their families and pay taxes, we ask that you prioritize projects that have identified funding and timeliness so that we can break ground and move quickly to create good opportunities for workers. Number 3, enable the development of West Hayden Island as an industrial site and job creator. Building on our previous comments regarding industrial land and shovel-ready projects, we ask that you do all that you can to expedite and advance the development of West Hayden Island. Number 4, adopt policies and plans that protect and create good middle-class jobs. Portland has a reputation of being an open-minded and equitable place. This has made the city a popular place to live and attracted many new residents over the years. However, we must be careful not to lose our strong roots.
Can you wrap it up?
I'll conclude with that, and I'll go ahead and wrap it up there, and I'll submit this as written testimony.
Great. Thank you. Questions? No? Thank you. Gary Minowiski. Doug Cook, Steve Hansen. Again, if there is anybody else that wishes to testify, please fill out a card and give it to Julie, because these are the last 3. Gary, go ahead.
Thank you. I have testimony here. I have multiple copies. I suppose I can give them to you after I give the testimony. Thank you. I represent myself tonight. I'm a planner of 40 years in the state of Oregon. I live in southwest Portland, and I'm representing myself, but also Ash Creek neighborhood. And Ash Creek neighborhood, many of you may not know, is just south of Multnomah Village. I have 3 different things to talk about, and I'll make it real quick. First of all, Garden Home Road is identified in the comp plan as a road that should be totally rebuilt as a special project. In the list of special projects, Garden Home Road is, and it's supposed to be reconstructed as a 3-lane road like Olson has just been improved, and it's just a neighborhood collector street that's been, that only has 1,500 to 2,000 trips per day. We don't understand why the PDOT or whoever it was put this in. The only thing I can figure is that the section from 69th to Olson Road, which is just at the west end of the city, along Multnomah there, that section is an extension of Multnomah Boulevard, and that is a district arterial, or district collector, I think it's called. Now that one gets tenfold the number that we get, and our street parallels with Multnomah Boulevard. So we think that that might just be a mistake that someone made, but we would sure like to see that rectified. The other 2 things are, one of which there's been a lot of discussion about raising buildings, tearing them down, rebuilding, but there hasn't been as much discussion that I can find about the whole business of infill and the impact of infill in residential neighborhoods on existing single-family dwellings. And I have offered a policy for the staff to look at and for you to look at, and I'm sure that there would be findings that can easily be made for this policy, and it basically says that that there should be standards developed in the zoning ordinance or the development code subsequent to the comp plan policies. This would be a policy directing staff to develop standards to have physical characteristics be considered in the reconstruction or the construction of a new building when it's adjoining existing buildings or residents. And this would only be in single-family residential zones. The other policy that I would like to offer up is one, and I've offered where these policies should be put in the comp plan, has to do with the fact that the city of Portland is very concerned with schools, elementary schools being closed. One second. And I would like the city to encourage the Portland School District to reconsider the closures that they've made in elementary schools, because elementary schools are the backbone of neighborhoods, and the city planning department knows that, and I'm sure they can make findings to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Steve? I'm Steve Hansen. I'm 20-year resident, Military Heights neighborhood. I just wanted to get it in the record that I am very concerned about, for instance, the transit corridor that you're running down 82nd or that you've got marked. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I'm wondering if that's going to be expanded, and if it is, if it's going to be multi-use, is it going to be living above and commercial underneath? Because there's no parking on 82nd, so that means everybody moves into the residential neighborhoods for their parking to go to the commercial buildings. And so it all kind of works together as far as I'm concerned as to about the use of the neighborhoods, how it's going to overflow and affect the neighborhoods. So, and then my other point is I'm wondering about like, say, condemnations and eminent domain or whatever, if you know, what is going to be happening on that end if somebody doesn't meet your requirements. Like, I'm not right on 82nd, I'm half a block off, but it's still in that red stripe running down there. So am I going to be, I don't know what's going to happen here. I look on your website here and it doesn't give me any comprehensive plan, nothing current. So I don't know, I'm not getting any information off your website of what the plan is, you know, as far as, are you going to run a MAX train down the middle of 82nd and widen 82nd? Or is it going to be bike lanes and you know, a bus mall? I don't know. So those are the questions I want to get in the record, and I think they're questions that should be asked, because I think that it would affect everybody on 82nd, anybody or any other place like 102nd, 122nd, any place, because it's comprehensive to everybody that affects their personal neighborhoods. My property I own, that's our retirement. I don't want to lose it because somebody made a mistake and somebody showing up with a bulldozer one day and saying, you were supposed to be out here 30 days ago. We're taking your house down. So I just want to get that in the record. That's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Doug?
Thanks for the opportunity, appreciate it, and I'd like to share some things with you tonight. When I first got here, I looked over this.
State your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Doug Cook. Yeah, I kind of jumped ahead there. Longtime resident of Southeast Portland. Grew up in the Rockwood area and taught in the Centennial School District. Was a principal there as well. And now live in Argay in Park Rose, just a stone's throw from here. And a proud citizen of the east side of Portland. I was really excited when I came in here and looked at the comprehensive plan update sheet on page 1 talking about neighborhoods, because I'm concerned about our neighborhoods and what I've seen transpire in our neighborhoods during the last 50 years. And where it says that the goal is to create safe and convenient access to goods and services needed in daily life, where they can, and that they, the neighborhoods, can get to grocery stores, schools, libraries, parks, and gathering places on foot and or bike. They are well connected to jobs and the rest of the city by transit. The old plan, I think, served Wilshire, North Portland, Beaumont, Woodstock, Division, Concordia, some of those areas really well. I think they'd get an A+ for the planning and what they did for those communities. But I think they failed miserably in supporting East Portland. In the last several years, what I have seen happen in Portland, because of infill and gentrification, high density, and pockets without healthy infrastructure, has really challenged our neighborhoods. Overcrowding in schools has been talked about several times today, and I commend our superintendents for the fantastic jobs that they've done. I mean, our schools are still producing great results, and our folks, are doing really well with limited resources and some really big challenges that were brought on by decisions that were made from past comprehensive plans. You have a real challenge and a real big job in front of you, and I appreciate it, and I recognize what a challenge it is. But while you are celebrating and rejoicing over, the great job you've done in North Portland or at Woodstock, it's also what is happening is you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because it has had an opposite impact on East Portland. We've seen loss of retail and grocery stores. I've heard several people talk about that. I think the loss of grocery stores and the fact that we can't get a Trader Joe's or New Seasons in this area, we can't even get a Safeway in this area, or Target just went out of business, is a microcosm of the decisions that have been made by the people who are in decision-making positions. And it's frustrating to see the loss of livability in this area. We have street congestion. There's no livability support like for parks, trails, business, and local jobs that pay a livable wage. The only answer for open space seems to be more apartments, more ugly, inexpensive row housing with less than needed parking space.
Doug, can you wrap it up?
Sure. The moving and compaction of our low-income families into the Deep East has created some real serious challenges for our area. Parkrose has open space. Let's use it for job creation, not more apartment complexes, not more housing. We don't need that as much as we need livable jobs. We need infrastructure. We need retail centers that aren't anchored by Goodwill or Dollar Tree. Not that those don't serve their purpose, but I don't shop there. And there are a lot of other people that would like other options. A medical clinic that you can walk to, a professional commercial building, large office complex. I'd really like to start thinking about job creation over living space.
Can we?
I'll end it there. And thank you for the work that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? We have one more. Christina. Again, if anybody else would like to testify, please give Julie. Going once, going twice.
About my situation.
Pardon?
I have 2 additional questions about my situation.
The staff will get with you afterwards and talk to you about specifics. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Cristina Palacios. I'm a community organizer with the Community Alliance of Tenants. I've been working with renters' rights presentations for the last 4 years in East Portland, serving a very diverse community. when we do renters' rights presentations from the Community Alliance of Tenants, we try to be very inclusive and have done many workshops in 4 or 5 languages. So I do have one suggestion to you that I hope is taken into consideration. I think that not only renters, but people that don't speak English should be listened to, and we should approach them in the places where they live and where they grow up their kids, where their neighborhoods are at, like in churches or the schools. I just came from Shaver Elementary School to do a presentation, and there were many renters there that had basic necessities, like very bad repair issues. They cannot even think outside their own housing because they don't have any other choice. They have to live in very substandard condition apartments because there is not enough affordable housing. On the other hand, I've been doing a lot of work in North Portland, and what I found out there is that same conditions apply. I met with an African American building yesterday, and they told me that they have so many repair issues and that no one really cares. So when we talk about plan, I like you to think about the buildings that are in very substandard conditions, how we can put them out to code, and how we can develop more affordable housing. I'm gonna wrap it up with 5 things that I've been noticing in the last 2 months that I've been working in North Portland, and also 3 years of work in East Portland. Rent increases displace people. We need to make sure that there is a cap on the rents because tenants cannot afford to keep moving around. It destabilizes families. 2, it came to my attention that Section A vouchers, or some of the landlords, because there are some very good landlords, and thank you landlords for doing that, but some landlords are making sure tenants cannot access their buildings by just raising the rent a little bit, so Section 8 vouchers cannot afford to live in their buildings. 3rd one, there is some bullying going around in North Portland and East Portland. Neighborhoods are complaining about their neighborhoods, saying that there is tall grass or there is loud music, there is a lot of people. They don't want to see that. So they harass the other neighbors so hard that they are left, they want to move out because they cannot keep up with that harassment. So we need to make sure that no one is using the Portland City Code menace to push people out. And the last thing is that I want to make sure that, again, everyone's voices are heard, that we do meet people in their communities and we allow for language interpretation services, because I think that if we are all in this boat, we should all make it through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes the testimony tonight. Again, the hearing there's 2 more public hearings. The next hearing, October 28th, 5 p.m. at the community room at Portland Community College, Southeast Campus, 82nd and Division. And again, the written testimony will continue through March 13th, 2015. And with that, we'll just start down at dawn and give each member 3 minutes to provide their impressions or comments. And you don't have to take all 3 minutes, just...
I won't. Since I showed up late, I won't take all 3 minutes. Excellent testimony that I heard tonight, and I think it really put a spotlight on East Portland, which is really good for us all to understand. But I think the testimony also touched on a lot of other issues that we need to deal with. So I was really happy with what I heard. I thought it was really in-depth, good testimony. I'm concerned about, the districts that are over capacity. How do we deal with that? That's a tough one to wrestle with because that's quality of life for all those young students every day. So I'm keenly interested in anything we could come up with to deal with that issue. It may be beyond land use. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you.
Well, I'll comment on my favorite topic. I actually had a similar reaction that Mr. Salinger described. I went back. One of my concerns that I've expressed is that the current language in the comp plan does not do what we need to do with regard to what we want to see should West Hayden Island be annexed and developed. I went through most of the documents. This is how thick I got, just trying to go back and capture the most significant elements of the mitigation, both for human health, social issues, and environmental issues. And I found it incredibly challenging to figure out what I would actually put in a recommendation to staff and to you for consideration. I've done that. I've got a draft. I'm prepared to, when we get to the working session, to provide you with what I think we need to do at a minimum. But frankly, and I know this is something staff doesn't want to hear, and legal counsel in the city, short of referencing all the documents that were referenced this evening by Bob, I don't know that we're going to get to the point that we got to as a commission that really address the social, environmental, and health issues. So it's a huge conundrum for me. I don't know. Short of just saying West Hayden Island should be protected outright, I'm not sure where we're going to go with this. And I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have in the work sessions.
Just sort of a broader thought about the industrial development. We heard about concerns about development on golf courses or redevelopment of brownfields. And I was listening to that through the context of the Greater Portland Inc. Summit this morning that talked about the importance of industrial development in terms of dealing with our income inequality and just the ability of different types of industrial jobs, whether they're traditional or new economy type jobs, to allow people to improve their standard of living, access good paying family wage jobs without necessarily having to have a 4-year degree. So that's part of what I'm listening to and trying to figure out how do we have good, consistent with Portland's values, industrial development, but recognize that as part of the region, that's an important part of how we go forward and we deal with the equity goals that we've said we have. Listening to the concerns of the neighborhoods about TSPs, the TSP projects, and certainly they understand their neighborhoods and what the road issues are. Also wanting to be sure that we're looking at what the region is saying about what we need, again, with economic development for the region and making sure that we're on the same page or we at least understand where the region is about the freight mobility improvements that we need to see.
So I'll pick up on what Mike and Michelle have been talking about, and I'll continue on to some other things. So it seems to me that the industrial lands question is going to be one of the pivot points in this plan. So I think I'd like to ask that very early in our work session process, I'd prefer at the first work session, that staff brief us on what happens if we choose not to try and get all 600 acres that the formulas say that we need. What would change in the plan if we did that? Either if we try and achieve that or if we don't try and achieve that. It seems like there are two big forks in the road, and I think we ought to understand that early on. So I'd very much appreciate that briefing early in the process. Some of the other things I heard tonight, continue to hear about the need for more affordable housing, and I mentioned that after the first hearing. How do we bake that in? Really challenged by the testimony we heard about the specific problems of East Portland. We have David Douglas asking us for essentially a no-growth policy. We can probably look at some things that slow growth, but I don't see how no growth could be healthy for any neighborhood, particularly when we're hearing that we don't have enough commercial services. Stopping growth will not bring in grocery stores. That's for sure. And I hear when I hear about removing residential from Gateway, well, Gateway is the only regional center in Portland that should kind of be our second downtown, and like downtown, it should have a balance of jobs and housing, and it should be an economic generator for the district, not seen as a problem, pushing students into the schools. So how do we make that work in a positive cycle rather than a negative one? We've already worked on rezoning 122nd to get more commercial, but if there's no market there, that doesn't do any good. So, maybe we need strategies that get more income diversity so we can build back the market that has, that brings in the commercial services that everyone in the community benefits from. I see this as a hard problem, but a crucial one that we have to address. A whole series of transportation issues. How do we make our TSP work, assuming a CRC that a lot of us believe isn't really going to be there? What does that do to the rest of the system? How do we factor that in? I was really fascinated by the testimony from Groundworks about, we don't want to drive through in the middle of our town center, and if we're working for walkable, bikeable, transit-friendly town centers, are drive-throughs things that we should allow in the zoning for town centers? I think that's a question we should ask. The testimony about the TSP timeline, I can really relate to that. I mean, I'm part of the transportation expert group. We are both moving very fast, so fast, in fact, that I worry that we're not taking enough time to consider individual projects, but also see that we're going to be challenged just to make the schedule that we published. And are we going to get so compressed that we don't make good decisions? I worry about that too. Definitely relate to the comment that was made about should trails be in transportation rather than parks. I mean, that's always felt a little irrational to me, although I realize there are organizational reasons why it also fits in parks, but that's kind of a city bureau reorganization question as much as a policy question. It's got a lot of interesting pieces to it. And then finally, a lot of people who testified about their individual parcels in business districts. And I am sympathetic to the idea of having continuous commercial strips in our business districts rather than patchiness or hopscotch as it was referred to. But I also know from having served in the neighborhood association for every one of those pieces of testimony, there will also be residents who will say, you're changing the boundary, and you're going to change my livability if you put more commercial activity next to me. So I want to challenge our district planners to look at every one of those very carefully and come back with really well-crafted recommendations for us, because that's a tight wire act, but it's also going to be important to having our healthy neighborhood centers. So that should do it, I think.
Pretty much for all of us.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. You stole all my stuff. Anyway, just to pick up on the last comment, I think we heard some great examples that help to inform us in our changes that we're trying to do with the neighborhood corridors and trying to resolve the hopscotch patches of commercial and non-commercial. And you're right, there are both sides to that. We have to really look at those. Affordable housing definitely is an area that we have to do some good work on. We have to do it in the right place, as evidenced by the testimony on David Douglas, and how we can resolve the affordable housing issue while making sure the infrastructure is there is definitely an area that we have to do some work on. And then the last one is the alternate language testimony. I don't know if we plan to hold sessions in that way, or at least can encourage that we get written testimony in alternate languages that can then be translated.
It's hard to add anything new to what's been said already without being repetitive, but I do want to speak personally about how sad I feel that we have to make a decision between not creating new housing because we can't educate our kids. We don't have enough space to, whether it's a question of children or residential development, when both should be accommodated in a community that's growing. And so I think that's an enormous struggle that we're dealing with, certainly here on the east side, where both of those things have come into contradiction with each other. It's terrible to hear that classrooms are as crowded as they are in a world where we need more educated people than ever before in all languages, for all people. I also heard that the city is growing in ways that disadvantages certain zoning, that farms at one time are becoming malls. I don't mean that in the general way, but in a general way, I do want to say that I think we are struggling with our own success, and that the planners and we are challenged to try to make those things accommodate and work with each other. Everybody who came with an individual story about why my store should be here and the zoning is there is reasonable. It has to do with normal expansion. But it isn't the orderly way in which a city has to grow and be planned. So somewhere in that needs to be a compromise. But overall, what I'm impressed with is the people who turn out and speak and express things that are not only in general good for the community, but are personally important to them as they watch the city grow. So I agree with all the things that are going on here. I think we're going to struggle with Hayden Island mightily, but I hope we'll come to a good conclusion. And I think we're strengthened by these community meetings.
I'm not going to repeat it right there with you guys, so I'm just going to pretty much leave it at that and thank Karen and thank Park Rose for having us here. To me, it was a pleasure and an eye-opener to hear kind of more specific points of views from this community, and I'm thankful that we had the opportunity to be here. And all I will do is summarize. My brain was just spinning on the comments regarding David Douglas and kind of requesting reduction of housing. Don't have any answers for it, but it's just got my wheels spinning. Industrial land topic as well as mixed-use zone, so look forward to discussing those further.
So also I was extremely happy and proud to have this conversation at our house, and we heard some very decidedly East Portland comments that we don't often get when we meet on 4th Street downtown. So I'm really, really appreciative of the East Portland voice that we heard tonight. The two things I'll call out were the testimonies of Nick Salvi, who has been very supportive of the work of the East Portland Action Plan, where he talked about following East Portland Action Plan with East Portland getting parity with public facilities and public spending. And I think when you represent 28% of the city, and we come nowhere near 28% of the money that's spent or the planning that's done. And I've always pointed out that there is no East Portland quadrant plan. The only plan that we've had has been through the East Portland Action Plan, and yet that continues to come under fire and continues to get monkeyed about at the highest levels. Just infuriates me. We're really concerned about gentrification. I've already noticed in this school district on our western edge, we're starting to gentrify. And everybody talking about gentrification tools, I'm seeing it before my very eyes. Housing affordability is very important, but the comments about David Douglas being overcrowded aren't new. These have been, when Barbara Rommel was superintendent, and I started to be superintendent 8 years ago, I offered Barbara classrooms in Park Rose because I'm the next door neighbor who isn't overcrowded. I'm not overcrowded. Our school district has flat enrollment. And instead of building in David Douglas, why don't you build in Park Rose? Just because our zoning doesn't allow residential development, why aren't people looking at Park Rose as a place for residential development just because we have a big fat airport sitting in our school district, which is wonderful. We have a great tax base. We just raised a fabulous $64 million bond and built a middle school, but you're not building houses here. And so our enrollment definitely could take David Douglas's enrollment and be quite happy about that. I just built a middle school for 800 kids, built for 1,000. I could use the kids. So right next door, where is that zoning conversation? So I think it's crazy. And it's right next door. We're Burnside difference of one block. And then the last comment I liked was Christina's testimony. She sounds and looks like my parents that are here in Park Rose. And so she just said she came from Shaver Elementary. It's one of my elementary schools. I've seen Christina before and the work she does with Kat. And I don't see a lot of my parents, once again, testifying in front of city. council or in front of the Planning and Sustainability Commission, and I really wish with the school districts that 70% minority and 30% don't speak English, that we had more of our people here tonight. So I appreciate everyone that was here. I just wish you had more people that really looked and sounded like my district.
Yeah, first, thanks, Karen, and thanks to the Park Rose School District for hosting us here tonight. I think it really improved the accessibility of folks out in East Portland here to the process, and I think that's extremely important. I'm at a place where I'm kind of thinking in big themes based on my own experiences in the community recently and also what we've heard here in testimony tonight. And for me, the big theme is transition and balance. And how do we get from where we are now to where we say we want to be? And, you know, I think some prime examples are of that are how do we achieve an automobile accessible community and promote alternate transportation, and how do we move in that alternate in non-automotive directions over time? Environment and business, how do we balance now, and how do we have transitional strategies that balance that differently over time? How do we achieve consistency in zoning and at the same time recognize non-conforming uses and people's lifelong plans for their own property and what that means to a family and what that means to a community in terms of wealth capture and wealth transmission? And finally, employment and residential land usage. So I think for me it all kind of ties up in transitions, and zoning is a piece of that, but I think there are other transitional strategies that I would like to see us discuss over time.
Thank you for hosting. I'm happy we were able to get out here, and I hope we can do more meetings out in East Portland to get just varied voices and varied concerns. I really liked hearing all of this testimony. It kind of reminded me that the city and the PSC should take on a consulting role to neighborhoods, supporting neighborhoods and their goals and their needs. And we can see that with the TSP, the need to provide lists of these projects and get adequate feedback from each neighborhood association. Hearing about the needs of David Douglas now versus Park Rose. And I didn't necessarily see it as a need to stop growth per se, but simply reiterating what someone who testified, but to reallocate that growth. So that's really important, especially as we look at economic employment versus housing and where those opportunities and where those developments are going. And with respect to West Hayden Island, I would like more background documents on the remediation schedule and the what should have been the remediation schedule, so we can evaluate this policy and see if it can be more flexible in terms of the acreage needed, if we can be flexible in terms of the schedule or exactly what policy needs to go into the comprehensive plan. And I'm also interested in trying to strike that balance between what do we need for industrial land versus preservation. So maybe looking at policies that prioritize brownfield remediation over green development. So looking deeper at the plan, like that seems like a concern, especially after hearing a lot of the testimony today. So I just want to thank you all and thank everyone that did testify today. It was really, really helpful.
Thank you. I want to thank Karen. It is always a joy to come out here. It was the second time we've been out, and the testimony is always, to me, just fantastic. to hear about the issues out in this neighborhood and in East County, and be able to, hopefully we can take your testimony and do and make some action on it. And Karen is always a gracious host and provides us plenty of cookies. So I love it. A couple of just broad themes, one, this issue of a school district, and it's kind of one shoe does not fit all, but a school district that doesn't want us to grow and at the same time is looking for jobs. And how do we bring industrial jobs or any type of jobs in grocery stores, and how do we do development that is consistent with the neighborhood, but it has to grow. As a city, we have to grow, and so how we do that is going to take some real thought and process, because we can push a district over the edge, we can push a series of neighborhoods over the edge, and we can cause more problems than we can fix if we do it wrong. From my standpoint, we have to bring the jobs, we have to bring that solution or a series of solutions. I don't think it's a silver bullet. And we have to do it in a concert with a transportation plan that I have a concern about in terms of what David said about timing. And we will have a transportation hearing, but is the transportation plan sufficient to support the growth that we're looking for in East Portland? And that's a critical question to me. If it's not, if the investment's not there, and it's not about maintenance, it's about original dollars investing to get as a catalyst to grow East Portland. And if the dollars aren't there, then the growth probably isn't going to come. We're not going to be able to attract the businesses that we want to attract. So I don't know how we do that, but we have to think about that. I'm concerned about the housing, because we do have to put housing in East Portland, and how do we get the right mix of housing that may be a transition from elderly, but we do want to put families here. And so at some point we have to have housing that attracts families and put families here, but that increases the schools, but we want to bring jobs. So how do we bring jobs with housing and address the schools? And Karen's school district may be different, but if we put a lot of housing here, she may be...
Try us.
Well...
I'll take that problem.
So I'm concerned about the industrial land. West Hayden Island is one issue in a large industrial land problem. If we don't meet our industrial land, I'm not real clear, and I guess this is a question to staff, what's the consequences? I mean, legally, if someone sues us because we did not meet the land, industrial land, what could happen to us? Do we go back to zero and have to do this whole year and a half, 2-year process again? I'd like to really understand that. It's more than West Hayden Island. There's a lot of other industrial lands we're looking at. So West Hayden Island is a key part of that. And once we understand the legal ramifications, I think we can start to make some good decisions around West Hayden Island and the rest of the industrial land as we look at it. The residential and commercial areas, they talked about Fremont, some of these areas, it seems to me we ought to have some consistent zoning as a policy, and how we address that is important. And the other thing that I enjoyed tonight was the people bringing specific properties. Hopefully staff will connect with them all and address their specific concerns, because I think that's what this is about. If you've got a specific problem with your property, this is the time to do it. I think hopefully we don't wait 30 years again, but it's a good time to do it now. So bring your problems. With that, I think yes, Susan.
I just wanted everybody, before Susan says anything, that's Jared Freeman. Jared is the high school Not you.
Who is this guy?
Right on. Jared Freeman is the principal of this high school.
All right.
So just wanted to give you a and he's still here. We make him stay here. He never goes.
He's just showing off for the boss. He stayed late tonight.
Sorry.
I guess I just want to say a couple of things. One is that there were dozens of questions tonight that I think you all needed answers to in order to make decisions. We'll begin when you come back for the work session. We'll have 2 more hearings like this. That's when we'll begin to bring all that stuff back to you. We will have had conversations with a lot of the individual property owners before the work session, so you'll be able to ask those questions. We'll be able to provide, I think, a lot of clarification. You know, one of the things I've noticed is that I've seen, as your staff, I've seen you all evolve into sort of this wonderful sort of organism, commission, whatever you want to call it, of really diverse voices and ideas. But it just makes, I feel like the proud mom here a little bit, because I'm looking at you guys. This is weird to do this here. Usually we do this in our little private sessions, but is that the Planning Commission used to be sort of an 80% development commission. It was filled with developers, architects, engineers, designers, all who were great people, but all who had predominantly a focus on how do we work and build in the city. Your voices are very different. You have jobs as your interests, you have environment, you have education, you have health, you have a youthful point of view, an older point of view. Hey, sorry.
And even
it's a just much more diverse group than even a decade ago. And so I'm just really proud that y'all are coming together, because I think you're going to hopefully be able to look at these issues from very different perspectives than I think we would have had before. So that said, I hope you remember that when you're all in work session and disagreeing with each other. Because I know that I've had individual discussions with some of you, and you are, on some issues, still pretty far apart. And so I think we'll have to work and respect each other to get to a point so, we can get this wrapped up. And yes, we will have answers to things like what do we do with industrial land, and how do we work through the process if for some reason we were to decide not to pursue West Hayden Island. Thanks.
We're respecting and honoring our differences, as it says up there on the Park Rose banner.
Go Broncos, and
Bronco
sounds
Pride.
like they're winning next door. So
Sounds like they're winning.
with that, we're adjourned.